Well, I'll say this: those who are somewhat neurotic about all of this would probably do
Mhm.
well because this is,
Welcome to my channel.
yeah.
All right, so welcome everyone. I am so excited to bring on and introduce you to Dr. Francis Yu, who will be telling us all about himself, his life lessons, and what he is up to today. So I'd love to hear from you, Dr. Francis Yu.
Okay, yeah. Enjoy the super broad prompt.
Brought on purpose, right? Because
Yeah.
I think, with you being the first guest, I think it's what to expect, right? And it's often we hear, I'd love to hear what you do. But the whole point, and kind of what you're coming, we have your book here, The Legendary Quest, is about kind of what makes you you and who are you. And so I think by starting with what do you do, we might escape understanding who you are. I know that even leaves it more vague, and we can create a movie for the rest of our lives over that question. But just what your thoughts are today.
Yeah. So it does start with my parents because they immigrated to New York from some South Korea 3 years before I was born. So I was born in New York, born and raised, and still in New York. And I realized I grew up in this dual culture, right? I went to school in Queens, New York, but when I came home, the language wasn't English, it was Korean. So, and there were these in navigating these different sets of cultural expectations at the same time. So that was even until now. That's am I a Western person, Eastern person, both, neither, whatever. And in context, because we're going to talk about more of this. I'm a physician now. I'm a doctor, right? I see some patients. I do other things that's non-clinical. But being a doctor was never the childhood dream per se. I'm not like some other physicians who said, "Oh, since I was 4 years old, I played with the stethoscope," or "I encountered my pediatrician and then I knew I wanted to do that." It's I didn't have any of that. I was just happy doing what I was doing, just reading my summertime scholastic books and reading my what is it, Nancy Drew and Hart and the Boxcar Children and all these old just books and Goosebumps and Choose Your Own Adventure.
Oh my goodness, we were reading the same. The Hardy Boys, I think you were
Yeah,
thinking of
yeah,
the Hardy Boys and the
yeah,
Goosebumps
yeah.
books. Yeah.
Playing with my Legos, eating foods. Like I don't know what is. I don't really want to do. I don't really want to grow up. I don't understand the concept of all those things. It was just okay. I go to school and then I play and I eat. So it's like okay. Uh, and I had a lot of. I fortunately did well in school. I was I enjoyed math probably because of the puzzle solving aspect, and I eventually did go to double major in philosophy and mathematics. Super heady, nerdy type of stuff while doing my pre med. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do medicine or not, but it was one of those, oh, let's just for insurance, just in case, so that I don't have to do extra courses afterwards. And there were a lot of parental pressures.
Yeah. And at this point, so say that you were thinking of, I had heard a few things, that I'd like to ask you about. And I sorry, I'm probably breaking your thought
Yep.
process. But if you're at this point and you weren't feeling a parental pressure, if you could have done anything at that point of your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
what would you have done?
I've thought about this a lot, and I would say there would have been two or three different possibilities, although they could be combined as well. I may have went to grad school for philosophy.
Mhm.
I may have done something music related, and I may have done something not really. Maybe I just kept playing and I don't know, lived in my parents' basement or something. it was just it was a lot of learning and things I'm interested in, but the idea of making a living was well, even now doesn't really I don't really jive and correlate with that sort of mindset, especially the one my parents had in terms of have a stable job, have a secure job, which I'm grateful I had the opportunity to go to med school and do all of that because it did give me the options to choose and integrate the parts I wanted, meaning I could be employed, I could be self-employed, I could charge more money for my services or whatever it was. So I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to do all of that, and I'm not prevented from doing any of the things I said. I could still do something music related or go back to grad school or whatever at some point. And I am grateful that probably going down this medical route did give me the experiences, both in a textbook classroom sort of learning, but also the years of learning, during residency training, as well as all the experiences I had, which gave me the real life experiences to help figure out what I wanted to do when I grow up. Now I finally know what I want to do when I grow up. It took maybe 30 years longer than some others, but I think I finally have an idea.
Yeah, and you were saying that it felt that you know you have a combination of the Eastern and Western cultures.
Yeah.
And I'm a person that's lived in the United States my whole life. I don't really have that much exposure. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the cultural aspects that you are bringing in, or the things that you're thinking about when you're thinking about how you mix different cultures?
Yeah, for me growing up though, I wasn't aware of it. It was just I fit in and adapted to whatever situation I was in. It didn't occur to me that it was different in one situation and maybe not. Or I was just so good at adapting to it unconsciously, which mannerisms I used or which language I used, that for the first few decades of my life, I wouldn't really say it was something I was aware of. Only recently I realized I hear people of Western Caucasian people, they go to the East and learn from these Chinese masters or something. They went to this opposite culture to learn something. And but for me, I grew up watching a lot of different entertainment, eating foods from West and East, and it didn't feel it didn't feel as foreign to me, whatever different situations I'm in, and but I do recognize now that I was able to navigate all of it. But now making sense of it going forward is a little bit. How do I do it more consciously and I don't want to say maximize it, but learn from it to use it for myself and others? Because I realized it was just how it was growing up. It's not I said in my mind, oh, I have to switch this mode on now and this mode on now. It's just that's just one of my I think part of my psyche and how I grew up is being able to adapt to this sort of situations and being with my extended family versus being in with my dorm mates in the graduate dorm, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you were saying that now you feel that you're starting to figure out what you want to lean into.
Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit about what has helped you to really connect with that part of yourself?
Yeah. So as I said, I did my undergraduate studies were in mathematics and philosophy. I smushed it all into 4 years. I had to take two summer classes. And one thing I do regret, I took intermediate Spanish instead of taking Japanese because I had a language requirement. Uh, so I was very scholarly, I would say, or excessively heady scholarly throughout forever. And people say they enjoy in medical school they enjoyed third and fourth year more. I actually kind of liked first and second year a little bit more because it was just more contained in a way of studying. And all of this I didn't really recognize until I started learning about certain psychological personality typologies and systems. Foremost, MBTI and Carl Jung's typology and the Enneagram, and learning about these, not obviously, of course, also getting certified in them, helped me realize the patterns of what I did, and so that I can be more cognizant of how I did things and how I may continue to do things. I put things into a context that really helped me navigate life.
That's really neat. So because I hadn't known exactly how you got interested in all the different personality. And can you tell us a little bit about everything that you're doing with those
Yeah.
personality assessments?
I would say I first took the Myers-Briggs type, the indicator, the questionnaire in my, I think it was early 20s. And I was fascinated about the concept of understanding myself and understanding other people. And this may perhaps have roots in my the situation context how I grew up. Maybe I didn't feel understood at home because I wanted to talk a certain way, or when I went to school, I didn't feel like I fit in either, just because there's different contexts and cultures that I was navigating. So Myers Briggs, I learned about that, and then I immediately wanted to learn more, so I learned more about Carl Jung's psychological systems that it was based on, and I found that early fascinating as well. And then during residency, third year residency, during my vacation, I remember going to a 5 day or so training program to become certified in the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. So that's what my vacation times were. It was to learn non-medical things, pay and pay my attention and money to learn these things. And though without going into super detail about the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, I did learn a lot in those 3, 4, 5 days. But I find that it was really just the beginning of understanding because I really put into context into the larger, deeper system of Carl Jung psychology. And then I learned about the Enneagram, which is, it does include a typology system, but that's just a part of it. But then it was the Enneagram Institute in New York, and I found one that was in New York. But because of the cost, each course cost maybe about, I don't remember, $1,000 or $2,000. I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was a little bit more. And that was during residency. I just didn't have the funds to do that. Over the course of, I think, 4-ish years as an attending physician, I ended up going to, back then they had it as part one, part two, inner critic, part three, and the master class. So all of them were 40 hours long, except for the inner critic, which was maybe 20 hours ish. So, and again, a lot of money,
Mhm.
attention put into this learning, probably to learn about myself more, learning how to navigate the world, which is actually a part of my psyche and my patterns and as well. And then what else? During residency, I also did the medical acupuncture course, becoming certified in that, learning different ways of navigating health and personalities from a Chinese medicine perspective, whether it is the different meridians or the organ systems or 5 phases. And I did realize soon that a lot of it was about understanding, structuring, and figuring out how things worked so that I can live life in a way that's better for me. And some during, I don't know how many years ago was it now? Some years after residency, I also took a a CAP, which is a Kundalini Awakening Process workshop held by now my friend. He was one of my residents because I was his program director then, and his mentor. And it became a large component of my personal wellness development and healing process. And it all came together in 2019 when I decided to that I wanted to, number one, make money doing what I wanted and have more authority over my days and my years and what I'm doing. So my entrepreneur journey started in 2019, or I decided to start it in 2019. And then what can I do? I realized I spent thousands, $10,000 on all these extracurricular, extra medicine education that I could put together that's probably not something really seen in the physician circles to help people with their journeys. And in 2020 is when I started doing that more officially per se, getting the education to how to do all these things, like make a website and make a business entity, things like that. And that's also when I started my own private osteopathic medical practice. So since then, I've been making a lot of connections, failures, missteps, changing around what I'm doing. I wrote and published 3 books. This is the
Yeah, here's
third book,
one of them
actually.
here. Yeah, and I was, all the investment that you had, I'm just thinking as we are in medicine, a lot of us feel like we get lost. A lot of us go into medicine for one reason and get lost in the system, or we're disillusioned by what it is, what it actually means to be a physician. So I often hear, when we are as a coach or just in conversation with people during our career transitions, life transitions, they really get lost. And so it sounds so great, with all the investment that you put into understanding what's available and what things have helped you navigate who you are at the core. Like
Yeah.
from knowing you, I know you think very deeply, and the philosophical side of you is very palpable, especially even in the book that I have here. And I think as somebody that also loves to explore and go deep and what this whole channel is about, a person that feels in my mind, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like somebody that's feeling lost and they want to understand how they navigate, understand themselves better. I know that you offer some of the Enneagrams for people. Can you tell me a little bit more about, what would make somebody an ideal client for you, and kind of what services can you help them with?
Yeah, so this is something I had different iterations over the years, and I tried a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I came to realize that I do enjoy the process of helping coaching, quote unquote, people through their situations. But another part I really enjoy is the sharing and teaching and giving the context. There are times where I maybe in an hour, let's say, 45 minutes of it is just me talking about the background, whether it is Jungian psychology, the Enneagram, or the breath work. And then that helps me set up the context and the actual, then it gives us, me and the person I'm speaking with, the language to actually use that and look at the context, the situation, scenario, and navigate it within the next 15 minutes per se. So after realizing that, I realized what who is probably jive with me the most
Mhm.
are people who really are interested in personal work. That could have been tons of books per se, or maybe they took courses, or they go to workshops, or there's just maybe they have got coaching themselves, maybe they are a coach, or maybe they done meditation, whatever it is, they've invested something in some sort of inner adventuring or journeying, etc., but may not have had the opportunity to look into the more uh, in my experience, the more robust and the work that goes really deep, talking about the unconscious and dreams and motivations and um, doing breath work, maybe with qigong and things like this. So I would say people who really want to go beyond what you would explore, not even just in medicine. Let's say you go to some social media groups and people talk about this and that. I mean, there are all these things people talk about which are great, but then there are people who want to look further and get even, I won't say more obscure, but look even deeper and past certain things. So I remember the other day I saw a post. What book about mindfulness do you suggest? And I said, well, just read the Dhammapada, read the original writings of the Buddha. And why? I mean, yes, modern writings are great, but why don't we just start with? I mean, it still is great. So I'm talking about let's get to the not the core of it, but also those who want to invest their attention and to really understanding themselves and going deeper than uh, so yes, we could talk about career changes or relationships, but deeper down there is this universal human angst, anxiety, our existential ideas of why we exist and the meaning of life, and how do we differentiate ourselves from our culture, our parents, maybe even our organizational systems or medicine as a culture, but not fighting it per se, but still being my own individual while still being part of the collective system. So it's this. Well, I'll say this: those who are somewhat neurotic about all of this would probably
Mhm.
do well because this is
Welcome to my channel.
yeah.
Right. And I know too that you and I are both very big Martha Beck fans. And that came to mind, her book, The Way of Integrity. And in my mind, like this exploration of self, I know I got into quite an existential crisis when we think about our humanhood and then, oh my gosh, we all die. Like, I think that there's a point where some people may not want to dive there, but the people that do want to dive there, and to start that exploration, I was able to listen to some of your great webinars and to get some. So say if people haven't yet had any exposure to what you were just mentioning, can you share a little bit about the resources you've already created that they can check out?
Yes. So I would say generally anything I do is kind of colored by all these things, whether it is my appearances on other people's platforms, whether it is audio, video, or written. My books, right? The Legendary Quest that I co-author is one of them as well. I have a YouTube channel. But in general, if you just see the posts I put on social media, you just get a quick sense of things that randomly come into my brain, or how I interpret things, and the I don't say obsession, but the orbiting around certain things that really turn me on and that I like to focus and center on.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Anytime and even our initial meeting, like I had this inner desire to know more about life, and just meeting you and the deep thinker that you are, and that very, like, you pause. I know you do some breath work, and your aura, like everything about you. I'm like, I'm creating this channel and I'm pretty positive that you're going to be a recurring guest from the start, right? Because I'm like, this is going to be such a continual exploration. And every post that I read of yours, and then I appreciate you sharing it in our mutual groups, but in every single group, to your point, I'm like, you are so authentic. And I'm so appreciative that you're here sharing your story. And if you had some life lessons that you'd like to share, either things that you think you did right or things that you would have done differently. I know I'm putting you on the spot with a pretty deep question, but do you have any that come to mind as your key go-tos to start people off with?
Yeah, one thing I like to say a lot is you rule in or rule out, similar to how you have a differential diagnosis. Sometimes you think you want something, but you don't really know. And that's
Mm,
how rotations work, right? You do the rotations, oh, I hate this rotation. You go to that rotation, or I hate this rotation. And I mean, some people hate all their rotations. That's possible too. But for some, there's that one that they rule in and keep. So for me, I've ruled out a lot of things, right? Working employed for a big hospital system. I worked as a program director, so I said I don't want to become a DIO or something. I've been the vice chair of the family medicine department. I don't want to become a CMO of a hospital or something like that. So the lessons I would say is try it, and then you'll find out if you actually want it or not. I mean that goes for me too. There are things that I think I want that I haven't tried yet, and then I'd be like, oh, I don't really like this. It's like even starting a Netflix. I don't have Netflix, but people know what Netflix is. They watch something on Netflix. It's like, yeah, everybody kind of like this, but I don't know. I just, but if you've never started it, you don't know if you'll like it or not.
yeah.
And that goes for a lot of things: foods, experiences, relationships, books, whatever it is. And the lesson is, if you don't try it out, how to know that it's something you really want or that'll work for you. So I'll say that's a big one.
Yeah, I think that's such a great one too, because I know in my life too, it's we have a thought. And I was I was in the Air Force, and I was trained to be an Air Force oral surgeon. And at the time, I loved surgery. I loved the Air Force. I didn't know that I would develop severe depression when forced sleeplessness, or I didn't know the reality of what it would feel like to be a resident until I tried. And I don't feel like that was a failure for me. I just identified core things that I would need to function optimally. And I identified key aspects of my surgical career that I still enjoy. I'm always told by people even today is like, oh, of course you were in the military. It's like there are certain things, I'm really enjoyed being in the military and that structure and being around people that really have typically are known for our integrity. It's one of the Air Force core value: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And even though I'm no longer in the Air Force, it's like you learn what aspects you like and you learn what aspects you don't, and then you can take that forward into your next best steps. So I really like that.
That actually reminds me of another one is wherever your attention goes is where you're building skills and experiences. And that could be something as simple as organizing files on your computer, or learning how to post pictures or videos, or making YouTube videos or videos on a channel or whatever. Just the more you do it, the more skilled you become at it. And the realization I had is we all have things we preferentially did, and whether or not we think it was quote unquote valuable or not, it makes us who we are in the sense that that's the skill set or experiences we have. And if it's something we spent so much of our attention on, it's probably something we like doing.
Mhm.
And to not and to be aware of that let's say someone watches a lot of Netflix and they say, oh, I can't keep watching Netflix. Well, the very fact that you watched all these shows is actually, you know, a lot about all these shows. And you can argue that's not marketable in a business sense or whatever, but that lets you communicate with many people who haven't watched all the show. Basically, it's getting. Whoa.
I always usually this is why Reese is a big part of my YouTube channel, because there's never one incidence where he doesn't bark. So if I mute, it's because he's barking.
Got it. So yeah, for me, so that is learning about psychology, reading philosophy. Used to be playing a lot of electric guitar, eating sushi. Right. I say eating sushi because there are at least two sushi restaurants I've been to so often that they know me and they offer me a bottle of sake as a gift, and they call me a sushi king, and just because I go so often. And it's wherever you keep showing up is where you're becoming more of yourself. And that could be desirable or undesirable, right? If you keep doing or being places where you don't want to keep doing things, then you'll keep developing skills and experiences that aren't helpful to where you want to go. Let's say you want to learn how to play the drums, but you have a drum set but don't play it, then it won't do as much. Or you hang out with people that are negative or aren't really forward thinking, and that's just what you get, right? It's where your attention goes, where you are, that will uh, help define who you are now and who you will be in the future now. Yeah.
You know what's funny is I did used to play drums.
Mm.
And I was thinking I was so, because I wasn't perfect at them and somebody else was better than me, I like stopped playing even though I had fun doing it. And then also with Netflix, it's always that question of, am I buffering, right? Like, why am I watching this? But I agree with you. It's that when people are in their natural, playful, like, where does your mind go?
Mm.
And what are you interested on Netflix? Like, what does that show you about your interests? Of course, if you're being influenced by the people close to you, then kind of your core influences. And then what also stood out was, if we are around negative people, like how can you tell me a little bit about, maybe I know Ketan, and we'll talk with Ketan with you, but it was really neat to hear how you two developed, a friendship, and how that interaction has kind of shaped your identification of yourself and your values.
I would say 2020 was, well. Let's put it this way first. I've had Facebook, right? Social media. I have had social media before Facebook, right? Where like Live Journal and Zanga. I didn't do MySpace. Uh,
You missed out. I think I did MySpace for like a week or two. And I apologize if my dog's going to invite himself again. That's why he's a core part of the YouTube channel, because we already knew he was going to come on.
well, I had a MySpace. It's just none of my friends were on it, so it's just not one I used.
Hmm.
I, after a certain number of years, all of the people I knew in person, whether it's from high school or undergraduate or medical school, I would say nearly all of them, 95 plus percent of them, don't contact at all through Facebook. And I increasingly grew all these contacts from all over the world. And especially, I was always on the internet, but then I think just there were more people on it during starting from March, April of 2020, as people just were online more, whether it's because they work situation was different or they're indoors more. I don't know exactly. And then I had the opportunity to go to many of these online events, especially the leveraging growth, uh, the summit, the first one in 2020, which came right after I started doing my entrepreneurial work. Actually, I learned about it. I think I learned about it through Mike Wu Ming, who was one of my physician entrepreneur mentors. And he said, "Oh, check this out. Is this gonna come out?" And yada yada. Anyway, so there, it's always a great place to find the like-minded just people. And Ketan was one of the people we met probably through our introductions and our common interests. And then at some point, we just started having a Zoom meeting every week on Sundays. My time 8 p.m., his time 9 p.m. He's in Canada. I'm in the United States. And then we basically, maybe except for 5 or 10 times for near a year and a half or more. We just met every single Sunday, and we just talked about things we had in common, were interested in, which is a lot about what I talked about. It's about becoming a better self or leaving the mindset of cultural expectations and the physician world of how to be and how to do, and ranging from ancient wisdom on modern psychology. And we had a lot of common interests. Even they were a little bit different because mine was more like psychology, work oriented. He had a lot more leadership and official leadership training and things like that. But after at some point, I said, let's just record our conversations. And I learned that from, I forget where, but I learned just have content. And then we recorded all those conversations. And a few months into it, I said, hey, why don't we just write a book using all the content we're writing? So we said, great idea. And then we transcribed all these talks, hours and hours and hours of talks. And then we got help to help organize our words into a book structure. And then basically it became the Legendary Quest Project, which is just this book, our podcast, and the upcoming um, group programs and such. And what another great thing I like about the book is that he's the one that drew that picture on the front. He painted that, and so it just speaks to how just showing up and doing something, meeting people or doing anything consistently just makes something. And we're both excited to hear about people's experience with the book, getting feedback, and we want to make it even better, keep releasing more podcast episodes, and use these concepts to practically help others, because at the same time we're also helping ourselves, because this is part of our journey and our quest too.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to meet with you both and continuing that discussion. And the first thing that is on the back of the book is, did you start your professional career after many years of training only to discover you are not sailing in the right direction? And I think, that's a lot of us now. And even if we started and it was, sorry, it's very loud if you hear me going on mute again. I've got the train and the dog. So again, we're just going with the flow, with the acts of life here. But even if we got into a career path knowing what it was when we started, by the time we finish, sometimes it's changed. And I think it's so helpful to know our core values and our core interests so that we can always pivot and use it in a direction that's still within alignment of what we want to contribute to the world.
I want to follow up on that a little bit. I think we'll probably talk about this again, the whole burnout concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's a triggering word, not a negative or positive way. It's just a very ever omnipresent word nowadays. Probably in other fields as well, but definitely in the physician healthcare world. But I always like to reframe things in a way that makes sense to me. And have I ever been burnt out, quote unquote? If I look back on it, probably. It's probably certain years that I could definitely say, oh, these are the years where I felt more dissociated or whatever, things like that. But nowadays, when I look at that experience, I saw it as the the beginning of the end of something. And I'm going to write an article about this, but I haven't yet. It's the physician phoenix, right? That when a phoenix dies and burns out, they're revived in a new way that's brighter, stronger, but also more with more life. And the other way I like to explain it is when you're roaming the fields and you have a fire, right? You don't stay in one location and have one fire burning in the same place for forever. Now we do because we have lights. But back then it's, oh, someone stays up, they have the fire overnight. But at some point they let that fire burn out and they go somewhere else and start a new fire. And for me, I think for me, the way I now look at burnout, it is a sign that a a certain way of being or identity may be dying and burning out, but then as a physician phoenix, I have to let that part of it burn out so that I can burn on and stronger and light up in a different way. So that's how I've been conceptualizing burnout. And it's a you know, in the tarot, in the classic tarot, whenever you draw the death card, it doesn't mean you're dying, literally dying in many situations. Although I'm sure there are some situations where it does, but it is a total new transformation of a certain way of being that's going on, and and in a way, when people say, what certain people say, I think I can't speak for everyone, and say I feel like dying or feel like killing myself or whatever. Probably, yeah, I can't speak for everyone. It may be this certain aspect of my life I want to shave off or not have anymore. It's just sometimes I think it's conflated the entire being with a part of our life. Let's like I left behind my full-time employed job, so that part of me feel like needed to die in my life, so that another part could burn on stronger.
Mm.
And so the other example I like to use is when you go to a buffet, you have two plates of food. Uh, you can't pile up food forever on the plates.
Mhm.
You either have to eat it, throw it away, or something, or otherwise, the food you try that you say I want to try this. I'm going back to the whole trying things again. I kind of don't like this pasta dish. Well, if you don't get rid of the pasta dish, or if you don't get a new plate, you won't be able to get the sushi that you really like put on there. So it's we have limited things we can hold with our hands at one time. That may be a sign if I want something that I want more, I need to let go of something else. And
Mm.
sometimes psychologically, from my perspective, from Jungian psychology and Enneagram and others, and Chinese medicine, it is there are cycles of of being born, growing, and then dying, right? That's what we have in our seasons too, right? We have our spring, summer, fall, and winter in many places in the world. That it is being conscious and aware and cognizant of what area of my life maybe needs to wither away or be discarded or be put underground or put to sea so that I can get whatever's coming to me next. And then whatever you said before made me think about that.
That's awesome. And I know in our group that we often talk with another colleague, Dr. Cathi Whaley, who has permission to burn your manual, and she's a hospice and palliative care physician. I really like how both of you, it's interesting too, because I feel like once you start to lean into who you are authentically, you find your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was thinking about the people that have really dove deep into who they are and what it means to be human and processing all the emotions and the grief of what you were just talking about. Like I experienced grief of my career at the same time it was grief of an individual that was close to me passed away. It was just like all this grief, and to name it, even if it's not death in the true sense of human life loss, but it's kind of death of a previous version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, that's awesome. And I like, I know that we could talk forever, and I'm glad that we were able to at least, have this introductory conversation. And if people are going to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
I would say I am, if you're watching this on YouTube, right, or wherever you posted it, I'm probably on whatever platform it's on. So if
Yep.
you're watching this on YouTube, go to my YouTube channel, you can find me.
Put
If
a link to
you're,
that
I don't know
channel.
if this is embedded or pasted on social media, whether it is LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, just find me there as well. If you want to see I call it my online CV, my comprehensive all the things I do, it's drfrancisu.info. And I am redrawing up my, I don't know what to call it, my teaching, training, coaching program details. And that will be floating around, or if you're interested, just let me know because it's kind of a read. So yeah,
That's awesome. And you have any last thoughts you'd like to share?
I'm just excited to see where this is going and just bouncing ideas off and cooking them together and seeing what comes out of it. I think we're on I won't say new age, but the direction of collaboration. Yes, we've been seeing that for the past 2 or more years, but I think we're coming up on even more of an emphasis on collaboration and uh, yeah, that's just what comes to mind. And yeah, if anything I said rings some bells or grumbles your stomach, whatever, just chat and yeah, check out my information and stuff I have.
Well, definitely stirred me up inside. So I know we'll certainly share a lot more conversations. In the book I keep lifting up, The Legendary Quest is a book I absolutely love. And so I will also link that down below and we'll continue the conversation on that. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Till next time.